We're starting very soon. All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the AYOY podcast, which is also known as Are You Offended Yet? If you're like kind of new to this stuff. But here we have DeJake to my that way, and then also we have Wraith just below us. How awesome! How good! So I got a few things to say before we get kicked off. We've started posting on like a bunch of different media stuff now.
This is true. Yeah.
We're on Anchor, if you know it. We're on Breaker Audio, whatever the hell that is. We're on
Beaker?
Google Breaker.
You mean Beaker?
No, Breaker. It says Breaker. Don't deny me. Don't deny me the satisfaction.
Okay, continue.
Also Google Podcasts, also Pocket Casts, also Radio Public. And most importantly, Spotify. So if you want to join us as listeners, or if you want to play it in the background while you're driving, when you're going to sleep, because we definitely won't do it.
While you're driving and going to sleep.
Yeah. Like
I've done that. It doesn't end up well.
Yeah, it's true. I lose track so easily of podcast episodes. But if you want that option, anyways,
sleep at the wheel.
Oh, yeah, true. Fact. How about both? Yeah, no, I did not catch on. But
Phoenix has seen me.
So,
okay. Continue.
But, like, feel free to listen to us on that or still join us on YouTube. But, yeah, the option's out there now, so enjoy. But, Wraith, what is our episode about today?
Episode's about something I feel so strongly about. I want everyone to know about it because I feel like it's just good. No, I'm lying. It's about anarchism.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So we've got our lovely anarchist. We're going to get into this very soon, but we have our lovely anarchist DeJake, and he's looking real hip, real cool, and he's ready to answer our questions today. But I guess my first question, Jake, is when and why did you start following anarchism?
Oh boy, that is a long story, I might say, and there's obviously a lot of parts to it. Like for me personally, and in the ways that I found it. But I grew up in a very strict home, in my opinion. I moved out. I had a fairly libertarian nature, one that would be against most forms of human oppression and people stopping other people from doing things, and that was my attitude pretty early on in life. I moved out when I was 18, and I kept that. And then I realized not long after I moved out that I needed to vote, and that took me to looking at all the political parties, and then one of them stood out, which was the Liberal Democrats, which are a party I later became a member of in Australia, but talking to people through the Liberal Democrats, and then you thinking about my morals more, and then the philosophy behind what they believed in kept me thinking about what I believed politically. And then when I really started thinking about what I believe politically, it really quickly led me down a slope to less government, and then no government, and then very quickly into anarchism and into voluntarism, which is what I'm into today. And it's really my nature of leaving other people alone and not inflicting force or interfering with others' bodies or property without their consent. And that just always seemed the logical moral way to me, no matter what religion or idealist ideal you kind of have. So, and therefore anarchism was just the natural thing that led to.
Huh. Very good. I just remember while you were saying that I forgot to mention this is part one of anarchism and anarchy, and it's going to be all about the questions, and next time we'll get into another aspect. But
it's true.
Thank you.
If you want to hear anything specific, leave a comment down below.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
Yeah, any
questions?
questions, particularly spicy questions for next?
Because Phoenix isn't that bright. So.
Oh yeah,
Leave the comments on YouTube and we'll definitely see them. I want to read out all the
definitely.
comments on YouTube.
Don't leave them on Spotify.
No, we won't read them anywhere else.
Exactly.
I don't think you can comment on Spotify, right? I don't think that's a thing.
Yeah, so our listeners are just gonna have to like jump platforms for a moment and bear with us, but yeah. But yeah, so in saying that, what are the other types of anarchism, I guess? Like you mentioned a bit of your own, but what other ones are there?
Yeah. So anarchy has a lot of different schools of thought. There's very different sides of anarchists, and a lot of anarchists believe that many other anarchists aren't real anarchists, and that there's so much difference between a lot of the different anarchist branches and theories. I'm going to explain some of the main ones. One of the ones that's definitely most popular that people think of, and that it's what the red A symbol represents. When most anarchy symbols you'll see, the anarchy sign will be red, and that stands for anarcho-communism, which is one of the most popular forms of anarchy, and it's also part of what the Antifa believe in, which is been.
Oh shoot!
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I didn't even know that the red one was about anarchism, like anarcho-communism.
The red of the anarchy, anything red and an anarchistic is usually some type of anarcho-communism. And Antifa are a part of anarcho-communism, or usually affiliated with anarcho-communism.
Wow.
So they're the violent groups in the United States that have been known in the news for many riots and all kinds of questionable actions and violent actions have been recorded around the world as being Antifa, which is the anarcho-communists. So this is one of the biggest school of thoughts in anarchy, or of the anarchist ones, you might say. And they believe in anarchy. They believe that anarchy is the destruction of all hierarchies, including like the patriarchy, including classes, including sexes, and including ages and gender. They're the people who most want equality. They want a fair environment for all, and they want to have a system that will allow all people to be essentially as equal as possible, and have equal opportunity to all the things that humanity produces, and that's essentially what anarcho-communists. Hopefully, I've done them justice there, but that's what a large amount of what the anarcho-communists believe in. So, the existence of government for anarcho-communists was also obviously one of the biggest problems for them, because the government itself has inflicted class and power, and also just overreaches power immensely over the people. And so therefore the anarcho-communists are very much violently against the government and the government's control of humanity. There's a lot of young people also in anarcho-communism, I've noted. It's a very interesting school that goes back about as far as anarcho-capitalism does in some areas, but anarcho-communism is one of the schools that's really exploding a lot recently. There's a lot more people that are talking about anarcho-communism and joining anarcho-communism, and young, and like Antifa, there's no small thing. It was on international news for a reason. It's because a lot of people are into it. A lot of people support Antifa, and anarcho-communism is not as much as a minority as almost all other forms of anarchy. There's all the other forms of anarchy usually have very small populations that are really gonna stick around and support that ideology no matter what. But the anarcho-communists, there's a lot of very dedicated people, and especially in America, it seems to be a very big movement towards anarcho-communism for young people. And that's been really interesting to see, and obviously that's also affected a lot of the riot culture and the call for riots among a lot of waves in the US in a lot of places.
What have you do like media though for like in the way that Antifa was portrayed? I think it was portrayed.
Oh yeah,
like it was.
They were very villainized. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't disagree with that point.
Yeah,
that's later. And you laugh, Phoenix. And then like I feel like a lot of the people at the riots, look, I don't know, I don't speak for the people that were there, but I can't imagine how like. I don't know the percentage, but I feel like there was probably a large percentage that weren't even like members. And I think the press related to that was like, sure, there'll be. I know there's a lot of people that like the idea of that sort of anarchism, and it is like a large one. Like, I know that, but I mean, like, I think the press was mainly focused on the fact that everyone was losing everything, which is another thing I have with Antifa. It's just like, but it's. I feel like I don't know how you perceive it, but I feel like a lot of those people in those situations maybe were taking advantage of something that was being created by an organization, so they come under a banner, so to speak.
yeah. I mean,
I don't know what you think of the percentages.
It could be, and yeah, it's definitely a big thing online, and for sure, like it could have been a movement, and people will just come along for the ride as well. And like obviously, those numbers might not all be Antifa when it comes to those in the riots. Like I completely agree with that. You've got a point there. Still, it's still a very big thing. At least in online communities and online, and obviously it's been causing a lot more riot than most of the other anarchist ideologies.
Yeah.
The definite anarcho-communists are by far the ones you hear the most about.
Because I'm surprised that anarcho-communists are the bigger group out of all of the anarchists.
Sure.
Like
Easily.
I thought communism was a very it was a dying ideology, like for a lot of.
You thought communism was a dying ideology?
Like in the West,
we can all pray.
It most certainly is not.
Yeah, it's surprising.
Communism is extremely popular. Yeah, that's also a good point. Communism's also a huge power in modern day right now. North Korea, insanely strong, insanely dangerous. They're communist. China, insanely strong, insanely dangerous. They're communist. And communism has a huge support, like I was saying, in America, and a lot of young people, if they're not anarcho-communist, they're usually at least fairly socialist and very left-leaning in ideologies. The younger boys have always been that way.
The young people are, because they don't have equity. They don't have any money. When they get money, and then they're like, why would I give this away? I just worked for it. But like, no offense to like China.
It's true that statistically,
all the people love the government. I'm sure every Chinese man loves the government.
Oh, absolutely. We wouldn't say that any of them don't love their government.
I'm sure North Korea is in a good way.
Absolutely. They're not treating anyone. No.
No one's in camps.
They're not using United Nations tractors.
Whoa.
No.
That was a school camp to remember.
Oh,
but like, I wouldn't say like. I feel like in the West. I think there's a lot of just missed ideas and misconceptions of the communism and its functionality. But we're here about anarchism, so fire away until we're ready.
I am very keen to talk about that too.
We're here to learn. So
this is true. This is Jake's. This is predominantly Jake's episode. Like
that's true. I've been so excited for this one. I've been so keen. I've even been telling Ash. I'm so damn keen for the Anarchy podcast. Yeah, I'm pretty.
Yeah. So
Really keen to do.
what are like I guess what are the minorities in anarchism then? Like the
Yeah,
types of
well, apart from anarcho-communism, one of the next most popular would be anarcho-capitalism, and this is the yellow anarchy ball.
yeah, very
So
good.
the yellow A symbol, which you may recognize around some of my content, has been the symbol for anarcho-capitalism, whereas the red anarchy symbol is the symbol for anarcho-communism. But the yellow side on anarcho-capitalism is the one that I've actually been a fair bit closer to on my journey and a fair bit more synthetic for in the people that I've known. So I see some happy. I see Rafe's
I
happy with
mean,
that.
you gotta. There's a silver lining to every cloud.
Yeah, so anarcho. All right, dude, stick around. I think you might not mind anarcho-capitalism. It's like,
Yeah, I've dabbled.
yeah.
When have you
So
not dabbled, Wraith?
that's a good point.
This is true. Shush.
So anarcho-capitalism is the belief that the exchange of goods and services and that peaceful trade and free markets around the world without borders, without taxes, without tariffs, without the government controlling the economy in the way that it does, which it very much does. The government, the form of capitalism that we see today around the world is nothing like the world that an anarcho-capitalist would see as capitalism. Um, Anarcho-capitalists, yeah, and anarcho-capitalists get a lot of shit for believing in capitalism, but even though the capitalism that we experience today wouldn't anarcho-capitalists would argue isn't capitalism. You've got the governments like with an insane amount of taxes all through businesses in their transactions and with individuals, and there's just an insane amount of money that everybody has to pay, not in huge big number taxes, but hundreds and thousands of little ones that the government imposes through businesses in so many different sneaky ways. And for that, and also the government grants out a lot of money to very certain businesses for very certain reasons. And for that reason, the economy that we see today is kind of a fraud that the government kind of taxes and funds as it pleases. And also the government can tax, and also, as we can clearly see, the government taxes some things like cigarettes a whole damn lot more than most other products like bread at the shops. And there's a huge amount of tax discrimination against certain businesses, so that the economy we see today is very fake and controlled by the government, in an anarcho-capitalist view. So therefore, an anarcho-capitalist believes that in a world with real free trade and an international free market where people can really buy and sell and businesses can create products for people without the restrictions that governments impose on them, that a much more prosperous world can come about where people are still looked after and have organizations that can care for their needs and can care for their protection, while still having a completely consensual world with no governments involved in anything really, where people can rely on organizations to supply the majority of their needs or self-sustenance as well. And that's what anarcho-capitalists believe in. And obviously they've got a big problem with anarcho-communists, because anarcho-communists want to establish a somewhat communist society after anarchism has occurred. If they ever do want to take over a government, they would want to force establish communism and everything. Whereas capitalists would be like, what if we take out the government? Let's let businesses supply products to people, and then we'll just support the businesses that help us out the most and protect us and give us healthy, reliable resources. And that's the difference between anarcho-capitalism and anarcho-communism. And that they hate each other quite strongly. There's a huge feud between anarcho-capitalists and anarcho-communists, and they're often trolling each other and often actually infiltrating other people's groups and spamming them with, I've seen it many times in especially the anarcho-capitalists or anarcho-capitalist meme pages that I follow have been often infiltrated by a lot of anarcho-capitalist or pro-anarcho-communist memes, and it's really funny to see. Like it's quite a common thing on Facebook for sabotage to happen against these two schools of thought. They're quite the opponents. Exactly, and
trying to start fights in between them.
Oh, the messages I've seen where someone's like, "Isn't this your 9th account?" and the other person's like, "Yeah, what are you gonna do about it?"
Yeah, very good.
The social media wars are fun, but
Yeah.
they're definitely very differing ideologies, and the anarcho-capitalists are the ones that would also identify as libertarians and would sympathize more with libertarian parties such as the Liberal Democrats, who also are big fans of free markets and capitalism. And
I have respect for them.
Yeah, and also anarcho-capitalists are very big on things such as freedom with guns and weaponry as well, and that you're not free. And also, even some of the biggest communist philosophers have also said this, that the people aren't free if they have no weapons, but the rulers do. And in that a society with no guns are just slaves. And that's what both anarcho-communists and anarcho-capitalists would agree on, is that people without guns are defenseless and unable to fight back against unjust rulers. And anarcho-capitalists and communists can both agree that the rulers that we have today are nothing more than a corrupt fraud of a democracy that constantly lies and lets down on every front possible, and so therefore needs to be eradicated and then set up with a much more moral and efficient system.
Yeah. So it's very evident that there's anarcho-communist and anarcho-capitalist. I'm assuming do you want to just quickly run through some of the smaller ones?
Yeah.
And then
I'll go through. I'll go through. That's a good idea.
I might get
Right.
Wraith to ask his questions, and then we'll go on to the big, what is anarchism as a whole,
Yeah.
and all of that.
And then we could get into my voluntarism and all that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
100%. All right. So we can go into anarcho-primitivism is one of the ones that's been on my mind. Phoenix and I were having a good chat before the potty started, and I actually started talking about anarcho-primitivism quite a bit. Anarcho-primitivists are a fairly small group of anarchists that believe that we should go back to essentially tribal hunter-gatherer living, where we just go back to very, very basic non-technological living, where we just live as one would say the Australian Aboriginals did, or maybe the American Indians, or many of the peaceful nomadic tribes that have lived across the earth. That's what anarcho-primitivists believe, and they believe that all of the structured society that we know should be destroyed, and that we should just live nomadically with nature instead.
Yes,
that's what anarcho-primitivists believe. And they still want to destroy government, but the thing is, I don't mind them doing their thing. And if people believe that they want to just commune with nature and be a nomadic wild person, then they're more than welcome to, as far as I'm concerned. And as long as they don't want to absolutely force everybody to have to do that, which I think is a reality that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
I'd very much be surprised if there became enough anarcho-primitivists to take over the world.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was small communities of anarcho-primitives, because I've seen...
And I'd be very happy for people like that to go live on and have peaceful, happy lives in their anarcho-primitivist worlds, and I'm very happy for that to happen.
Yeah, and I've seen like places that have actually isolated
Live
themselves
on
from the world.
encampment.
Excusez-moi.
Continue. Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I'm good.
But like,
Yes.
I've seen like documentaries of communities that do something very similar to anarcho
Primitivism.
primitivism. Yeah, that word is very sticky.
It
But
is a sticky word,
yeah,
yes.
but like I've seen
Mm.
seen like groups come together. They don't have a government system. They're just like
Mhm.
out there. They're completely primitive. No technology. No nothing. Often smoking weed. All that kind of stuff. And
Hell
it's like
yeah.
it's really interesting. But yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if there was like if it's already been known to exist. And from what I've seen, it's evident that it exists. But yeah, I
Yeah.
could be wrong
Yeah,
at the
for
same
sure.
time.
Yeah, sweet. And that's anarcho-primitivism. There's also another one that me and Phoenix actually covered before this started was queer anarchism. And queer anarchism is anarchists that focus on the government's oppression on sex, sexuality, and gender. And they believe that the government has largely oppressed queer people and any kind of queer sexual acts and identities, as well as restricting transsexual people from being able to obtain the medicine and the well, whatever it is that they need to help them transition, and therefore the government has therefore the government obviously has no right to be doing that for a queer anarchist, and then the queer anarchist would be an anarchist focused on the sexual liberation of that government has been taking away from the queer community, and that's what queer anarchists believe in. So they're just anarchists with a queer focus on what the government has been doing, and they often are very much on the side of the anarcho-communists. And many, I from my experience, many of the queer anarchists would also be anarcho-communists, I believe. So that then I think a lot of queer anarchists would also have a side. So I would also consider myself a queer anarchist, and I believe that the government has oppressed classes and gender and sexuality, and it most certainly has, and it's terrible. And that's one of the big reasons the government is just an immoral. The government we have today is just a terrible and immoral system. So for that reason, I'd be an queer anarchist, but I'm also part of other schools as well. And for this reason, for a lot of these minorities, you can be one of them, and also, likely one of the major ones, whether it's anarcho-capitalism or anarcho-communism. You'd probably have a side, and then you might have some minorities underneath. Like that's, for example, that's close to what I am as well. And many other people, such as queer anarchists, would be likely to be an anarcho-communist or have similar sympathies for them. Such as my next one, agorism. Agorism is one that is a minority that's much more sympathetic towards anarcho-capitalism. Agorism is the belief that anarchism should come about through peaceful trade outside of government taxation and rule. And the idea of agorism is that people should just be living, producing resources, and trading with each other outside of the government as much as possible. Because the government's main source of income is simply just leeching off society. The whole reason the government can exist and have the huge amount of power that it does is because it can tax everything that we do, essentially. When we go driving, or when we work, or when we buy things, no matter what we freaking do or buy or sell or try and accomplish, the government's going to be there along the way, taxing you and charging you money for it. And therefore, agorism is focused on living outside of a place that the government can tax you. So it's, for example, growing food on your own and continuing to consume food in a way that the government can't tax you for. And it's producing your own resources, and it's buying locally with trading with cash or Bitcoin or whatever else the trader would use that the government can't tax or track. And the idea is agorism would be, and the idea of agorism is that people can reach an agoria, which is their ideology of people trading peacefully without the need for a violent government, because nobody chooses to consent to trade with the violent government in the first place or give them any money. So agorism's all about, people trading together without the government being able to tax you for it, and living outside of the government, which is a form of peaceful anarchism. Agorism is peaceful in nature, and it's a peaceful kind of rebellion that a lot of anarchists on the anarcho-capitalism side are into. So yeah, that's agorism, and I'm also an agorist. I very much like agorism, and I love to take part in buying things locally, and using Gumtree is actually an amazing agorist tool. You can get so many things on Gumtree. It's great. And you pay in cash. The government never knows. The government never taxes you, and you can live in. Also, farmers markets are very, very useful things. You can go to farmers markets, pay in cash. They never pay the government anything. They're just farmers selling the things they just grew yesterday.
Yeah.
And you're paying them cash for it. Like, what are they going to do with that? They're going to keep it.
That's great. That's great.
So having farmers markets and using tools like Gumtree allow you to live very easily off the grid. Like, pretty much everything that in my house, I never paid $1 of tax for. I bought it in ways through Gumtree or other places that wouldn't have no taxes or records paid to the government.
Yeah, because also when you do like with farmers markets, you're giving it straight to the farmer, so you know it's going
exactly.
Like,
and you know that your product, what you're paying for is exactly going straight to the maker. Yeah. And that's agorists are very big supporters of things like cryptocurrencies and the black market. And that's also crypto anarchy is another one, because it's actually like a minority of agorism in itself. The minorities have minorities, obviously.
It's Inception all over again. It's Inception all over again.
Exactly, it is. And then part of that is crypto anarchy, which is believing we can form trade without the government through cryptocurrencies. And that cryptocurrencies can help us live and trade together effectively and produce income without the government taxing us. That's also a form of anarchy.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So, like, those are all really interesting. Wraith, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask now before we get into our next big one?
I did coming into that. I guess I did have some questions, but listening to all the variations in the way that they deal with things, I'm pretty covered in the questions. It is interesting hearing about different. Yeah. I think that was a better way of explaining it, as not covering it as a single entity.
Yeah, there's so many schools of thought of anarchy. It's pretty important to what it is. Yeah,
I think each one covers its own questions that can be raised. So, I don't think every single one covers them all. But the questions that can be raised are filtered down, which is interesting. So I'm pretty comfortable.
Hell yeah, that's good.
If I feel like throwing up, I'll be going for part 2 to kick it back.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so
that's right.
Oh yeah, part 2 is all about that opposing side and beating Jake to a pulp. Yeah. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna love watching it. I'm gonna be here with my popcorn, just going hell yeah. But yeah, so what is anarchism? This is the big question now, and feel free to just spill your heart out into this, Jake.
What do I believe in then? Is what you're asking? Or what is anarchism as a whole? What I've been saying is anarchism as a whole. What is all of anarchy?
You shape this the way you want to. Talk about what anarchism, if I said anarchism, not a type of anarchism, just anarchism, what is it? And also, feel free to, expand on your own type of anarchism.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, sure. So, anarchy is obviously all the things we've been talking about, and not everybody who's an anarchist would call other people who call themselves anarchists. And there's there's a lot of different sides of anarchy that just completely alienate other types of anarchy because they completely hate them. That the anarchy completely depends on who you ask, and so many different people will give you a completely different definition of anarchy. There's so many different schools of thought; it'll just be completely different to whoever you ask. But for me, I am mostly focused on another one of those minorities, and that's what I'm going to start talking about, which is voluntarism. Now, voluntarism is a form of anarchy that's just focused on the consent of the individual, on self-ownership, and on non-aggression. Voluntarism believes that everybody has the right to their own body and to own property, and that no one has the right to aggress or come upon a violent way in any way, or pressure someone else's body to do anything, or also interfere with their property. They're pretty much the two biggest rules of voluntarism come down to the non-aggression principle, which is essentially don't harm other people's bodies and don't steal their things. And voluntarism is pretty based on that idea of personal consent, where nobody has the right to control another person's body inherently. And therefore, obviously, all forms of government are wrong, and the government had put so many things in place to control the money that it takes away from us and the money that it takes away from the people that pay us. It steals so much money, and also the way that it controls the way that we live and the things that we're allowed to buy, and the also the law enforcement and the regulations and laws that it puts in place on certain things like owning firearms and drugs, and whether it's recreational drugs such as weed or anything more strong, or like medicinal drugs such as weed, or hormones for trans people, or any of the other very important medications that the government strictly prescribes that can easily save lives if the government allows to set free. Voluntarism is the belief that no one has the right to infringe on someone else's body or property without their consent, and that essentially eliminates government and promotes. It's fairly close to agorism, and also close to anarcho-capitalism, where they believe that free trade and people consensually just trading freely is a way for all people to thrive peacefully without the need for a government ruler.
Yeah. And like you said before, like I remember you said very early on about you have a right to own property. How would that work? Especially like with, I think this will ring a few bells because this is something that's come across before.
It is a very dicey question. You're absolutely right.
Like particularly from birth, and understanding like
From
what
birth,
you own and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, voluntarists believe that property can only be obtained through voluntary trade or giving, or by binding it in nature and having it uninhabited and therefore claiming it as your own. If you're able to inhabit it and use it, obviously. So you couldn't buy property, could you? So the only way to obtain property is by consensual trade or giving or receiving. So by trading, any kind of trading is okay as long as it's consensual, as far as voluntarists are concerned. So any kind of deal, any kind of transaction, any way to gain property that everybody else is okay with, that is okay in voluntarism. As long as everybody consents to you having this thing, or whoever had it before you did. And that way it works very similar to anarcho-capitalism, in that therefore to earn money or earn resources, you probably need to earn some kind of resource, which would usually include money, and sell, and therefore generally encourage an agorist or anarcho-capitalist society in the way that people behave in buying, trading goods, and owning things,
Yeah.
compared to an anarcho-communist society. But voluntarism is the focus of people owning their own bodies and property that they essentially receive from other people.
Yeah. So wait, they can consensually give away their body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
That's
very
completely
good.
that's completely within
Very
voluntary.
good. Oh no.
We can consent to absolutely anything, and that anything is okay to be consented to as long as the two people are willing and knowingly consenting into whatever's going on.
I consent
And
to slavery of my own
you
body.
can do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yikes. So, what does society look like with anarcho-capitalism or voluntarism, particularly with like schools, hospitals, things that are funded by the government, as well as like emergency services?
Yeah, these are the things that anarcho-capitalists in particular really like to answer. One of the really hard things about these questions is that obviously the government creates a world in which we're very much dependent on it for most of our resources. And if the government wasn't to exist and wasn't to restrict all these essential products that it provides to us, it would be, well, already a completely different world in which we would need a very different system to be setting up. And obviously, it completely depends on, the people and what they would generally consent to and want to create as well. And the thing about voluntarism is that we don't, if everybody was to suddenly take over the government and become voluntarist, then everybody would be peacefully trading and they could live how they wanted to, whether it would be rurally or anarcho-primitively. They're welcome to do that. People can live in anarcho-communist communes within voluntarism. That's completely okay. As long as everybody consents to what's going on and every adult has every right, or every person has every right to make their own decisions on where they are and who they're with and what they're doing, then anarcho-communists and anarcho-primitivists and anarcho-capitalists could, or anyone who wants to live in any way with any other people can do that consensually if they go off into their own groups, as long as they don't interfere with others and their property. And so the idea is a consensual world where people can freely trade and freely travel and freely produce their own resources and have the opportunity to buy and sell and create or just live on their own if they want to. It's up to them.
Yeah. So what about let's go very specific here. What about
for sure.
orphanages? Because they're often funded by the government, and there is a bit of charity work, but yeah. Yeah.
So for this example, an anarcho-capitalist might say, well, then you'll have hospitals set up, and obviously people can go to them, and they might have whatever system you've got there for a hospital in an anarcho-capitalist society. It's impossible to say. Because it's just so far off what we experience today that we don't even know the potential, right? It's not something that we can even simulate, but because there's so many variables attached to it. Yeah. But they would say there would be hospitals set up. They might have a system where a whole lot of hospitals would freely communicate with the other hospitals in hopes of helping each other and giving each other what they need, and also communicating about things like orphans, which is
right.
In answer to your question, they might have orphanages set up that could be funded by charities, and orphanages, if there is nowhere to go and the hospitals aren't able to obviously look after the children, then charities would have set up orphanages, and they already do. There already are privatized charities all over the world and privatized orphanages all over the world, and a lot of the most groundbreaking and successful orphanage work has been done by private people, and a lot of the most successful charity work is never done by governments, but it's by people who are passionate about it, working hard and making privatized efforts into areas that the government would just never have the passion for, because obviously for governments it's nothing more than a political stunt. Whereas if people are consensually forming charities, and even within a government society that we have today, charities get an insane amount of money every year. We already give so much to charity of our own free will. Even though the government takes like so much of our income, we still freely give to charity. And if we had like 2-3 times the amount of income that we could potentially have if governments stopped existing and people were able to live in a competitive capitalized society, then there'd be a lot more money available for people to give to charities such as orphanages, to give privatized care to any orphans that might happen in a that might come up in a voluntary society.
So, I wasn't aware that there were already some orphanages that were private. I had a mass
Lots of orphanages
assumption.
are private.
I had a
Yeah.
mass assumption that they were mostly like funded
People
by
are
the
very
government.
charities are capable of helping people in every single way that the government can.
Oh,
Charity in a voluntary
Yeah.
society, at least in a voluntary society, a charity would be capable of protecting and helping people in the same way that a government person could that any government could have. And also because you're also allowed to protect other people in a voluntary society, and if someone's being aggressed upon, you're allowed to protect someone the same way a policeman would. And charities and private militias and also paid groups would be very effective as crime stoppers, whereas police, who are just buffoons that work for the government, who actually do very little to stop crime at all, would be and also just very inefficient money-wise. Militias and privatized organizations could do things very efficiently and a lot better than police could,
yeah.
which is what anarcho-capitalists would definitely be arguing. Yeah.
So, what I'm hearing out of all of this is that without taxes, we have a bunch more money, which means we can distribute that to charities, and charities would be often more
effective than the government already is. Yeah.
But
And even today, our privatized charities are outrunning the government charities by miles and doing so much more to help them in practical ways. Yeah.
Because the one thing I'm curious about is that becomes a choice. Now, how many I would hope that a lot of society is charitable and they have a caring heart for people in need. But
Good one.
yeah, that would be what my hope is. But do you think a lot of people would actually give in to those charities? Like, if they had more money, it does mean, oh yes, I have so much more money now, which means I can do what be a bit more flexible and free with it. But do you think that people would be putting that money into
Yeah, they already do. I mean, Bill Gates, he's a capitalist mastermind, and many other celebrities and many other very, very wealthy men have given, and women have given, it's actually especially the women, have given like a huge amount of their portion of income to charity. And that's after that's been taxed immensely by the government. If, for example, Bill Gates, who's one of the most successful men in capitalism ever, or capitalism, but he's just one of the most successful technological innovators of our century. You might say, I would say, who has also been very, very good in advancing his business. Has given so much money to charity, and that's just his nature. And he happily gives like billions and billions of dollars away to charities. And if he had no government restrictions on Microsoft, for example, Microsoft could be earning like triple times the amount of what it is. Bill Gates would be twice as rich, or 3 million times as rich possibly, and he could be giving even more money away to charity. And the same goes for the other thousands and thousands of the 1% who do give billions of dollars to charity yearly.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. Yeah.
Let alone the millions and billions of other individuals who give little bits, and we've all given to charity in some small way or another. Even the drop of a coin. Everybody's dropped a coin in a charity thing somewhere someday of their life.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe not some of us. Maybe some of us have no heart.
I haven't done it collect.
Yeah,
I don't collect that.
yeah.
But you have, I'm sure you've
I have
helped
done.
charitably
I
in
have.
some way
I have,
at some point in your life.
Wraith
Yeah.
definitely
I'm sure
has
there's some slither of good somewhere in your life, so you
No,
can say you helped
Not
someone.
with coins, thank you.
Yeah, not with coins, but you could help with
You can be charitable by taking their lives in the first place.
I ask for their payment.
Yeah, and like individuals do a whole lots of things. They subscribe to the different charities that take monthly payments, and they give to people on the street as you walk past them. Like the individuals always have given charitable and through a lot of history, and a lot of what changes people's behavior to that is society rather than a government trying to redistribute money. And it's a society that often determines how poor people are treated, and it's the people, the individuals working within that society and within the charities involved that determine how well people have been treated in so many areas of history. Where the governments have just been doing absolutely nothing to help people. Private charities and private orphanages have been there. And stories like Mother Teresa, and although she's had some questionable things about her, there's been so many stories of orphanages, and even especially orphanages and private ones at that, but all over the world of private charities helping people in ways, and I've seen it with my own eyes in other third world countries such as Cambodia, where private industries just do a million times more at helping people than the government could ever do in their area.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the work that's been done by private groups, mission groups even, that have gone overseas and done
exactly.
That kind of
the mission groups have done so much more than the governments do.
Yeah. I wouldn't be that. That's a lot of truth to that, actually. I can see that very easily from my perspective, at least, as a
And there's groups like Christianity, which also just give billions from individuals, and they have huge charity rallies. Christians raise billions and billions of dollars a year, and they're actually very, very effective in helping people in third world countries.
They're a part of their beliefs per se is to be charitable.
Yeah, and many of the mainstream churches are very, very big on charity, which is a very beneficial thing for society.
Yeah, definitely. Was there any parts we missed to like the societal aspect of anarchism, Wraith or Jake?
I think it's been covered pretty well in this episode. I feel like part one's been a resounding success.
Yeah, very good. That's what I like to hear.
Nice.
I hope you all agree. But no, I think it's been very well explained. It's laid a good platform for a beatdown later. So.
Exactly. Yeah, dude. I said this to Phoenix before we started the podcast as well. I'm happy for either of you to get into me or ask me questions in the next fortnight's podcast. And what's going on, Phoenix, in the next podcast? Are we revealing his name?
No, we're not going to be revealing names. No.
Okay, so it's an anonymous person at the moment.
Yeah. I'll get to that near the end. But was there anything else you wanted to talk about in regards to anarchism, Jake?
There's so many areas about it. I could continue to talk about it.
Yeah,
I could continue to talk about it for another hour, I suppose.
What do you think are some important things for the listeners, the viewers, that they should know about anarchism? I guess.
Yeah, give us a top 5.
Yeah, look, anarchism. Yeah, sure. Anarchism is definitely not what the government has posted it as, and the government's had a huge campaign in the past century almost to turn even the word anarchy into meaning something chaotic and evil and bad, which is not what anarchy is about. In fact, many of the anarchists, there's even more minorities I didn't talk about, such as anarcho-pacifism, which is, and it is anarcho-Christians as well are also very pacifistic. Anarcho-Christian is also something I'd consider myself as. So there you go. There's another minority. Anarcho-Christians are very interesting. They've got some cool podcasts that I listen to. I like some anarcho-Christian podcasts. They're very interesting. And there's some really cool people doing anarcho-Christian activism and posts, which I really like. But
yeah, sick.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some really cool guys out there doing some really cool anarcho-Christian stuff. But yeah, anarcho-Christian is anarchy. Sorry, anarchy is in itself is actually a very peaceful philosophy, and although there are many people who anarchists actually who believe that we can only have a anarchist reformation through violence. There's also many people who, such as agorists and voluntarists, such as myself, who believe that mostly peaceful methods are the way, and changing people's ideas and minds will be the way that we can change society for the better. And and yeah, that said, protecting other people and their property and respecting that, and having peaceful methods such as agorism to work outside of the government and help people and produce resources outside of the government is one of the best ways to advocate anarchy. And it's not the chaotic, violent evil that it's been brought out to be. Whereas the government is, in fact, the much more violent of the two ideologies, whereas statism is all about violence, and the very existence of government is due to violence. The government only exists because of violence, and anyone who challenges a government in any time in history will be faced with, an army or violence or cops or whatever they've got with them. And the thing about governments is that they just assume ownership of people. As soon as, because they exist, because the new thing is democracy, and the way that they think, like, oh look, 51% of the people we think like us, so therefore we will rule you all with violence and enforce our rules on you, which is what democracy is today, which is just mob rule. And it's not even mob rule, it's almost minority rule at this point with democracy. It's an absolute fraud, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the two-party system is also completely screwed, where that, literal minorities are taking control of governments today, where it's and it's just very, very formulated system where the government's set up where it can never change, because with a two-party system, the parties' history of the red and blue, both in Australia and America and other similar societies, there's barely any difference between their behavior, and they often switch behaviors and policies depending on what decade it is. And often, like, for example, like, I've seen so many posts about how some democratic law like 20 years ago is now the Republican law, or vice versa. And the red and blue have very little difference to what the government actually behaves like and what the governments actually do. Whereas, like Democrats, they say they're the anti-war people, but there's so much bombings during the Democratic rulership, and there's no consistency between really government behavior and government change whenever a red or blue leader has been in power. The government democracy, as we know it, is an absolute fraud, and the evils that it's done, that it's born to humanity, both today and in the past as well, have, like Hitler rose to power in a democracy. People realize that, right? Hitler was voted in. A democracy is a way for absolute psychopaths to rule, and that's what they do. Frickin' Trump, what is he? Like a stupid rich psychopath? He got in. Pretty much, democracy just gives the richest, the most power-hungry, most evil people an actual tool to use to gain power over other people, is what democracy does. And the most motivated person who would want them power the most, and it also has the most money to achieve that, will get it, as Donald Trump clearly proved. Because he has money and a lust for power, what did he get? The United fucking States is what he got, because he had money and a lust for power. And he literally became the ruler of the United States. Like, that's what democracy is today. It's mob rule, it's an elite class keeping the government as what it is, and it will continue to stay the evil monster that it is, and no matter how many people vote red or no matter how many people vote blue. It's completely ridiculous. And that's something that most anarchists can most definitely agree, is that the government is a complete violent fraud, and that there's no evidence that just because of some fraud system, they have a right to tell you what to do and to tax us and to control our lives and our bodies. And that is, to all anarchists, is considered wrong. and that's our beef with the government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say, yeah, would you say that, like you said, anarcho-communism is actually really popular out of all the types of anarchy? Would you say that if you combined, I know it overlaps a bit with the types of anarchy, but would you say that if you combined all of the other types of anarchy, would there be all the other types versus anarcho-communism?
Yeah.
Which is a bigger community?
What would be a minority or a majority? Probably still the anarcho-communists, I'd say. But
Really?
it would still be close. There's a lot of anarcho-capitalists out there. There are quite a lot. And it's a growing thing. I guess, especially in recent years, like the numbers of anarchists, both anarcho-capitalists and anarcho-communists, are exploding. There's so many more anarcho-capitalists today than there were like 20 years ago. There's so many more anarcho-communists today than there were 20 years ago. And both of our numbers are still growing, so who knows who's going to come out on top. These are the days when anarchism is changing a lot. And voluntarism, for example, has only really come to light in like the past couple decades. And has only really grown a huge following over the past couple years in a lot of places. Like only now are voluntarist pages starting to take off and starting to gain a whole lot of reach. And for that reason, it's impossible to say because the numbers currently are changing more than they ever have, you could argue. So, but I would still argue that the majority is anarcho-communist at this point.
Yeah, because those guys, like, by the sounds of it, like, they're the most popular, and they're the ones that give you the bad rap.
Yeah, that's very true as well. Yeah, a lot of violent anarcho-communists have really shed a bad light on anarchy as a whole. I agree with that for sure.
Because you say that the government's like trying to change the word of anarchy into something really, really bad.
Yeah.
But isn't anarcho-communism feeding that definition as it is? Or am I wrong in saying that?
Feeding what? Sorry?
Feeding that definition that the government has.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, this definitely, not helping the idea through their violent actions that anarchy isn't what the government says it is. Yeah.
So it like the evidently communists, anarcho-communists is the big whopper here, the big whopper to it all.
It definitely isn't a lot of anarchy.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
So, I think that's a lot of. I think that's like we've hit the hour mark now.
We've hit a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot. But yeah, like this has been really good. I've enjoyed it. I think we've all enjoyed it. And we'll be next time we'll be doing part 2 of anarchism, which is going to be about the opposing side, and we're going to actually have a guest for that. So that's really cool.
That's going to be crazy.
Yeah. I'm keen. I know it's going to get a little heated, but hopefully all in love.
Hopefully, I agree.
But yeah, I'm keen for it. But this has been Phoenix, Wraith, and our lovely anarchist DeJake. Thank you for watching, and also don't forget to follow us on like all those other places, but listen to us on Spotify. That would be amazing, 100%. But
definitely listen on Spotify.
I listen to Spotify listener.
I listen to my I listen to my podcast.
Spotify for the win. Spotify for the win. But thank you.
Oh yeah, I'll personally reply to anything on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
We all will. We love talking to you guys. We love using your ideas as well if you want anything.
Yes.
But this has been the AYOY podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
AYOY midnight.